Our next topic is comparison of decimal numbers. Now, before going to compare the two decimal numbers, we have to look into what is meant by like decimals and unlike decimals. Now, look at these decimal numbers 1.2 and 3.5. Now, look at the decimal places. 1.2 has a 1 decimal place. 3.5 has a 1 decimal place. So, what is meant by the decimal place? The number of digits in the decimal part, that will give you the decimal places, number of decimal places. So, 1.2 has a 1 decimal place, 3.5 has a 1 decimal place. So, we can say that 1.2 and 3.5 are like decimals, like decimals. Then 2.57, 3.78, 9.85. Consider 3 decimal numbers. Now, 2.57 has 2 decimal places. The number of digits in the decimal part 1, 2. So, we can say that 2.57 has 2 decimal places. 3.78 also has 2 decimal places, 2 decimal places. Then 9.85, count the number of digits in the decimal part, there are 2 digits. So, we can say that 9.85 has 2 decimal places. Now, look at that, these 3 decimal numbers have equal number of decimal places, equal number of decimal places, equal number of decimal places. So, we can say that they are also like decimals, like decimals. So, what is meant by like decimals? If the given decimal numbers have equal number of decimal places, we can call them as like decimals. Now, 1.2 and 3.5 are like decimals. 2.57, 3.78, 9.85 are like decimals. Now, another example 1.785, 2.030, 9.560. Now, count the number of digits in the decimal part 1, 2, 3. So, we can say that 1.785 has 3 decimal places. Similarly, 2.030, how many decimal places are there? 3 decimal places. Okay. So, 3 digits in the decimal part. So, we can say that 2.030 has 3 decimal places. Then, what about 9.560? So, this decimal number also has 3 decimal places, 3 decimal places. So, they have an equal number of decimal places, equal number of decimal places. So, we can call them as what type of decimals? Like decimals. So, what is mean by like decimals? If the given decimal numbers have equal number of decimal places, we can call it as like decimals. Then what is mean by unlike decimals? If they have different number of decimal places, we can call it as unlike decimals, different number of decimal places. For example, 1.7, 2.83, 1.965. Now, look at that, 1.7 has 1 decimal place. 2.83, how many decimal places? 2 decimal places. 1.965, how many decimal places? 3 decimal places. There are 3 digits in the decimal part. So, we can say that 1.965 has 3 decimal places. Now, look at the number of decimal places, they are different. The number of decimal places are different. So, we can say that they are unlike decimals, unlike decimals, unlike decimals. So, like decimals means equal number of decimal places, then we can say that they are like decimals. 1.8, 2.7, 15.9 are like decimals. if they have different number of decimal places, that means the number of digits in the decimal part, number of digits, they are different, then we can say that they are unlike decimals. 32.7, 50.09, 150.689 are unlike decimals. Now look at this one. Convert the following unlike decimal numbers to like decimals. So if the decimal numbers are unlike decimals, we can convert it into like decimals. Now how we can convert it into like decimals? Now look at that, 0.375. How many decimal places? There are 3 decimal places. 3 decimal places. 2.9. How many decimal place? 1 decimal place. So 0.375 has 3 decimal places. 2.9 has 1 decimal places. So the maximum number of decimal places is 3. Therefore, 2.9 also we have to get it as 3 decimal places. So what we have to do is we have to put the zeros at the end of this decimal number. So we can put extra zeros at the end. So 2.9, so we need 2 more places, so you can put 2 more zeros. So 2.900, and the first one is 3.75. So look at that, here we have 3 decimal places and 2.900 also has 3 decimal places. So then equal number of decimal places. So they became like decimals. So when you are putting zeros at the end, it won't change its value. By putting zeros does not change the value of the decimal number. So we can put as many zeros as possible not to make them into like decimals. Now next, 6.5, 75.26, 9.377. So count the maximum number of decimal places is present in which decimal number. Here you can see that only 1 decimal place. 6.5 has only 1 decimal place. 75.26 has 2 decimal places. 2 decimal places. 9.377 has 3 decimal places. So the maximum number of decimal places is for this 9.377. So we have to consider the other decimal numbers also, and we can put zeros at the end of that decimal numbers, and we can get equal number of decimal places. So 6.5, how many zeros we have to put? So the maximum number of decimal places is 3. So we have to get 3 decimal places. So here we have only 1 decimal place. So how many zeros we have to put? 2 zeros at the end. So 6.500. Then next, 75.26. Here we have 2 decimal places. We need 1 more place. So we can put a 0 at the end. So 75.260. Next one is 9.377. Therefore, these unlike decimals converted into like decimals by putting zeros at the end. So in this way we can convert unlike decimals into like decimals. Now next we have the comparison of decimal numbers. So how we can compare the decimal numbers? Now we can consider the example 1.7 and 2.3. 1.7 and 2.3. Now first step, you have to express them as like decimals. So like decimals means they have equal number of decimal places. Now count the number of decimal places. So 1.7 has 1 decimal place. 2.3 also has 1 decimal place. So what about 1.7 and 2.3? They are like decimals. Okay. Then after converting them into like decimals, or already if they are like decimals, next what you have to do is you have to compare the whole number parts. You have to compare the whole number part. Now look at the digit in the whole number part. Here it is 1, here it is 2. So which one is greater? We know that 2 is greater than 1. That means 1 is less than 2. Our 2 is greater than 1. Therefore, 1.7 is less than 2.3, or we can say that 2.3 is greater than 1.7. So the first step, you have to express them as a like decimals. Then second step, you have to compare the whole number part. So here the whole number parts are different, and we know that 2 is greater than 1, therefore 2.3 is greater than 1.7, or 1.7 is less than 2.3. Now second example, 1.7 and 1.6. Now first step, you have to look at that whether they are like decimals. Count the number of decimal places. So here 1.7 has one decimal place, 1.6 also has one decimal place. So they are like decimals. Then after that, what you have to do? You have to compare the whole number parts. Here what is the whole number part? 1. Here also 1. The whole number parts are equal. So if the whole number parts are equal, you have to go to the next place. So what is the next place? The 10th place you have to look into. So what is the digit in the 10th place? 7, and here the digit in the 10th place is 6. So which one is greater? 7 is greater than 6. So we can say that 1.7 is greater than 1.6. 1.7 is greater than 1.6. Now third example. $25.6 and 25.680. So what is the first step? You have to write them as a like decimals. Now look at that whether they are like decimals. Count the number of decimal places. So 25.6 as a one decimal place. Then what about 25.680? How many decimal places are there? 1, 2, 3. 3 decimal places. So 25.6 and 25.680, what type of decimals? They are unlike decimals. So if you are getting unlike decimals, what you have to do? You have to convert it into like decimals. How we can convert it into like decimals? You have to look at the maximum number of decimal places. So here we have 3 decimal places. So for the other decimal number also, we have to get 3 decimal places by putting zeros, extra zeros at the end. Therefore, 25.6, after 6 how many zeros we have to put? 2 zeros. So 25.600 and 25.680. Now we made them into like decimals. Now next is compare the whole number part. So the whole number part, the number is 25. They are equal. The whole number parts are equal. Now go to the 10th part, 10th digit. 6 is in the 10th place, and here also 6 is in the 10th place. The 10th digits are equal. Then what you have to do? You have to go to the next place. What is the next place? 100th place. So here 0 is in 100th place, and here 8 is in 100th place. Which one is greater, 0 or 8? 8 is greater. So which out of this, which number is greater? Decimal number is greater. 25.680 is greater than 25.600. So in this way we can compare the decimal numbers. Now exercise 8.3, question number 1, which is greater? We want to find out the greater decimal number. First one, 0.3 or 0.4. So first you have to look into whether they are like decimals. Number of decimal places you have to look into. How many decimal places are there? Only one decimal place. So we can say that they are like decimals. Then you have to look into the whole number part. The whole number part, the digit is a 0. So they are equal. Now we want to look into the digit in the 10th place. So 10th place, it is one is given as a 3 and another one is a 4. So which one is greater? 4 is greater. Therefore 0.4 is greater than 0.3. 0.4 is greater than 0.3. Next, 0.07 or 0.02. First you have to look into whether they are like decimals, count the number of decimal places. So 0.07 is has 2 decimal place, 0.02 also has 2 decimal place. Therefore they are like decimals. Now compare the digits. Whole number part you compare, whole number parts are equal. Then go to the 10th part, the digit at 10th place. 10th place it is 0, here also 0. They are also equal. Now look at the digit at 100th place. Here it is 7, here it is 2. Which one is greater? 7 is greater than 2. Therefore, we can say 0.07 greater than 0.02. Next one, 3 or 0.8. What about 3? 3 is a whole number. So, how we can write it as a decimal number? So, we can write it as 3. Now, look at that, 0.8 has only one decimal place. So, after 3, you put a decimal point and you have to put a 0 because 0.8 has a one decimal place. So, you have to put only one 0 after the decimal point. So, 3 we can write it as 3.0. There is no change for the value of that number. 3 is same as 3.0. And if you want, you can put as many zeros as possible if you want, depending upon the how many decimal places you need. You can put the zeros at the end. So, you can say that 3.0 or 3.00, 3.000. So, all are equal. There is no change for the value of that number. Therefore, here we can write 3.0 or 0.8. So, these two are like decimals. First we made them into 3, we converted into a decimal number, and after that you have to check it whether they are like decimals. They are like decimals. Now look at compare the whole number part. Here it is 3, here it is 0. Which one is greater? 3 is greater. So we can say 3.0 is greater than 0.8. 3.0 is greater than 0.8. Next, 0.5 or 0.05. Count the number of decimal places. First you have to check into whether they are like decimals. Here 0.5 has a one decimal place, 0.05 has a two decimal places. They are unlike decimals. So we have to make them into like decimals. How we can make them into like decimals? We have to put the zeros at the end. So here the maximum number of decimal places is 2. The maximum number of decimal places is 2. Therefore, here also we need 2 decimal places. So 0.5 we can write as 0.50, then 0.50 or 0.05. Now we have to compare. The first you have to compare the whole number part. Whole number parts are equal. Then look at the digit at the 10th place. 10th place it is 5. Here it is 0. Which one is greater? 5 is greater. So 0.50 is greater than 0.05. Now next, 1.23 or 1.2. So 1.23 or 1.23 has a 2 decimal places, but 1.2 has only one decimal place. So 1.2 we can write as 1.20. So they are unlike decimals. We have to convert them into like decimals. Now compare the whole number part. Here also 1, here also 1, then 2, 2, then 3 is in the 100th place and 0 is also in 100th place, the other decimal number. Which one is greater? 3 is greater. So we can say 1.23 is greater than 1.20. Now next one, 0.099 or 0.19. What type of decimal numbers, like or unlike? Count the number of decimal places. 1, 2, 3. Here 1, 2. So they are unlike decimals. Now the maximum number of decimal places is 3. Therefore 0.099 or the next decimal number you have to change it into like decimals. So 0.19 you have to put a 0 at the end. 0.190. Now we can start comparing the whole number part. Whole number parts 0, 0, they are equal. Decimal part, the first place it is a 0, here it is given as 1. Which one is greater? 0 or 1? 1 is greater. So we can say 0.190 is greater than 0.099. 0.190 is greater than 0.099. So you have to compare the decimal numbers. So exercise 8.3, question number 1. There are 4 questions. You have to compare the decimal numbers. So that's all for today's class. Thank you.